Volo bog began to form about 1,200 years ago when the Wisconsin Glacier receded from northeastern Illinois. Large blocks of ice broke away from the glacier and were buried in clay and the gravel and the boulders, collectively called something till, that washed out of the meeting the melting glacier. As the climate warmed, these ice blocks melted, something depressions called kettle holes. Lakes, bogs, marshes, and other wetlands formed in the something.
The edge of the kettle. Notice the trees and shrubs extending to the left and right. These mark the edges of the old glacier. The marsh moat beyond is the outer ring extending Volo bog. The wooden boardwalk will lead through this and four other unique something communities. Passing from one community to the next is like walking backwards in time. Cattails dominate the marshlands of the northeastern Illinois. They provide cover and food for a great variety of wildlife. Muskrats eat the roots, leaves, and young shoots and build lodges with their leaves. Autumn is time for propagation among the plant world. Look for different methods of seed dispersal. Blowing cattail fuzz. They carry seeds, exploding jewelweed, seed pods, tick seed sunflower, the showy yellow flowers, whose seeds will tick to your clothing. Can you find the others? Winterberry holly, the dominant plant in the tall shrub community, is so named due to the persistence of the berries after the leaves have fallen. It flowers in June. Do not touch poison sumac. Oils throughout poison sumac may cause rash, worse than poison ivy. Learn to recognize the gray bark, compound leaves, and stout twigs. Set, go. The tamarack tree here drowned during times of high water. Living tamaracks lie ahead, growing on the floating mat that keeps them just moist enough but never too wet. Look for signs of life in the decaying wood. Go. Tamaracks are unusual pines. They are deciduous. Every fall, their needles turn golden and drop into the peat soil, releasing tannic acid. Notice how the water is stained brown by these acids. Crush the fallen needles in your hands and enjoy the aroma.
Enjoy that aroma. Tamarack, aka Eastern Larch. The fact that these tamaracks are alive and well indicates that they are on the floating mat. Their shallow spreading roots receive a constant amount of soil moisture as the trees float up and down with the changing water levels. Tamaracks were valued by shipbuilders who used the trunk and a main root, which grows at a right angle to the trunk, as angles for the hulls.
Sphagnum moss carpets the ground here. Native American Indian moms took advantage of the absorptive properties of the dried moss, lining their cradle boards with it for sort of diaper. Soldiers of early battles used sphagnum as a sterile field dressing, for the moss produces acids which inhibit bacteria. Without bacteria, dead things won't decompose. Set, go. Mushrooms add color to Volo bog, living on nutrients available near the surface of the bog and on decaying wood. Lichens are actually two organisms, a fungus and an algae, living in symbiosis, both benefiting. The mushroom provides living structure for the algae that turn provides nourishment for the fungus. Remember, Freddy fungus and Alice algae took a lichen. Lichens are believed to be an indicator of air quality, with the fluffier types tolerating less pollution. We don't have any very fluffy lichens. The pond is all that remains in the old kettle lake that once covered about 50 acres. Over the past 6,000 years, it has been filling with vegetation that is encroaching upon the middle. Today, Volo bog is the only such peat land in Illinois to still have an open water center surrounded by floating soils. Eventually, even this will fill in. This is a natural process called succession. In nature, nothing stays the same for long. When a bog is not a bog. A true bog is a mineral poor, as it receives water only from the sky. By this definition, Volo bog does not qualify because some runoff does feed into the wetland basin from the surrounding hills. Volo bog can be classified as a fen. Natural does not always fit neatly into our human-imposed category. For a while and watch. Listen for a splash of the water where a muskrat or mink swims. Migrating sandhill cranes may be heard trumpeting from huge kettles above, while insects buzz nearby. As nearly as 10,000 years ago, people lived in northeastern Illinois. They probably settled along the Fox River and the Channel Lake areas. Volo Bog and other wetlands away from the big waterways would have been a good hunting ground and place for gathering cattails, arrowhead roots, blueberries, and other edible plants. Early scientific explorers W.G. Waterman first described Volo Bog to be a scientific community in 1920. Many scientists followed, including William Beecher, who first arrived to the outer edge of Volo Bog as a kid on a bicycle. Dr. Beecher's love of nature led him into the dictatorship of Chicago Academy of Sciences. Nearby residents of Volo Bog used to hunt and collect blueberries for pies. Just water.
The open water in this area. The open water in this area is the result of early attempts to control the water flow in and around the Volo Bog. During wet years, the water is high and the wetland is a marshland mosaic of open water and the emigrant plants. In drier years, sedges and grasses cover the entire area like a meadow. Wildlife is often observed in this area. Here are just some of the animals whose signs are often seen. Occasionally a quiet version gets lucky and sees an unusual animal that is on the boardwalk for easy try.
Human land use and lost cows. In the early 1900s, the area around Volo Bog was a dairy farm. Local folk tales tell of cows and horses disappearing. Could they have wandered out onto the floating soils and broken through, never to resurface? The farmer sold his land to a sportsman's club in the 1940s. Go-karts, skeet shooting, hunting, and fishing here in this excavated pond, as well as the marsh moat, were popular. None of this was a threat to ecology of Volo Bog. In 1958, the newly formed Illinois chapter of the Nature Conservancy purchased Volo Bog. It was turned over to the University of Illinois for management. Many students from the U of I and other colleges visited and studied Volo Bog. In 1970, following threats to Volo Bog from impending development of the state, Illinois took control of this treasure and designated it an Illinois Nature Preserve. 1973 saw the designation of Volo Bog as a National Natural Landmark. Today, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources manages the Volo Bog to protect the unique ecosystems and its inhabitants for the knowledge and enjoyment of today's and future generations.